120 US doesn't buy you much nowadays, but it can get you this right here, which is the Cube WP10. A very large 6.98-inch mobile phone, as you can see, is powered by Windows 10 OS. So let's have a look and see what $120 gets us. So as expected, the specs are low end. So it's powered by Snapdragon 425 that has a maximum turbo of 1.4 GHz, 2 GB of RAM and a 16 GB ROM. Now the GPU is an Adreno 304, again very low end. Wireless AC, Bluetooth 4 for connectivity, 4G, but only two bands, 1800 MHz and 2100 MHz. So check with your carrier whether they will actually support their 4G bands there. Now the display is a 6.98-inch display, 720p IPS, and lastly the battery is 2850 mAh. So to cover the design of the WP10 here, you can see along the front there that at the top there is a front-facing webcam. Now that's 2 megapixels. Above that is the ambient and proximity sensor there. Now that earpiece acts as the loudspeaker, which actually isn't really that good, but it means that voice calls at least are actually quite loud and louder than normal. Now along the right hand side there you can see the volume and power buttons. Those are made out of metal. Now all of this frame all around the outside is actually made out of an alloy. Now that surprised me. I didn't expect that. I expected it to be plastic for this price. I mean, let's face it, 120 US, you kind of expect that quality. But it's not bad at all. It's quite solid and well made. On the bottom there's just the single micro USB 2 port. And there is a microphone down there too, located just above that. On the left side is the SIM tray. Now it's a hybrid slot, so it can take either two micro SIMs for dual SIM support, or you can remove one of them and put your micro SD card in there. Along the top we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, secondary microphone, and finally on the rear an autofocus, 5 megapixel camera, and an LED flash. So this is a massive mobile at almost 7 inches, and I can just fit it in my top front jeans pocket here, but I can't sit down with it. It's just going to actually dig into me, so I need to pull it out first. So it is a little bit awkward and comfortable. So you need to bear that in mind, as how are you actually going to carry this around with you? Now I must commend Cube on the build quality of this for the price category. I think it's really good. A glass rear on it, glass front, metal frame, well put together. There's no creaks or flicks in the design. I think for 120 US, it is really, really good. Now the screen is a 720p one, and you notice here that it's very reflective. It almost looks like a mirror. Now the brightness isn't that great. 350 lumens of brightness is definitely not the brightest screen you will see on a mobile. But in the shade and even in indoors, it's perfectly visible. It doesn't look bad at all. But because it does have a non-laminated screen and a pre-applied screen protector, it's quite hard to make out and use in direct sunlight. So the screen's 6.9 inches, 720p only, stretched across that kind of diagonal, means you're going to see pixels. It means it's not going to be the sharpest screen you'll ever see. And also on the top of it, you'll notice there's always this permanent bezel border at the top in black. I'm not too sure why that is. I think it's to do with the screen, or it's just the way the hardware is, the design of it. It's a little distracting there. And you'll also notice that at the moment in YouTube, that performance is quite poor when it's caching and loading in a video here. So if you haven't used a Windows phone before, it's not too hard to get around. So the home screen has all the tiles on there. You've got live tiles. You can resize them. You can remove them if you want. So here I go. If I decide, no, I want that just to be a small icon for the whole thing, or I want it even larger, then you can do that and even unpin it from the home menu. It's kind of straightforward, really. It's very easy to get around. And then now it does come with PowerPoint Excel, but I don't think there's actual full versions of them. Now the version that it is running is from around June, July. So it's not actually the latest Windows 10 mobile version that it's running. I've run the updates as far as I can. It's updated a lot of applications, but that's it. It's not going to go and get the latest version for some reason. So maybe that's got something to do with Cube support, or that's just as far as we're going to go with it. So I'm not too sure whether they're going to get any more updates from that. So GPS works on there. I've tested that out. That's not a problem. Everything else seems to work. Now the performance of it, scrolling up and down, you notice now and then you will get these stutters, especially when you go and view all of your applications, for example. I've noticed that this can get quite a bit stuttery at times, especially if there's an update going on or you're installing something in the background, then it will struggle a little there. But it's okay. There you can see the performance. This is one of the tests that I just ran. In fact, the only benchmark I'm going to run. You can see there that 27,910, that is very low. And where it really suffers is here, 3D performance. So quite bad, quite low. But again, it's 120 US, so you can't really expect too much there. So the store has a good range of apps in there. But this is where I would say it's kind of a bit of a con here to have Windows Mobile, because a lot of developers are leaving Windows 10 Mobile. They're just leaving Windows Mobile. So you can get most of the top applications on there, but some apps aren't being updated anymore. And you'll see under top games, there are a few big ones there. Your typical games. For example, Asphalt Extreme. But you just don't have that same huge range of games like you would on ISO or Android devices. So where I feel the W10 is perfect for is just light tasks, so internet browsing, watching a movie, documents, minor light tasks is good. Now the keyboard layout, if you've used a Windows tablet before, is exactly the same, and it's good to type on having such a large screen here. So I'm just going to go to TechTablets and show you that at least Edge's performance is quite good. I find that to be acceptable. Now it's loading in a little slow here. That's because my home connection at the moment is actually quite slow. So that's quite an image heavy website, and that's popping in quite fast. And because we have rather large screen, almost 7 inches, that using internet on it, I find is quite a pleasure. It's good. This is really what this mobile phone is good at. So 4G speeds and 3G speeds I found to be okay. Not the best, not the fastest, probably down to the chipset. It just doesn't have that processing power behind it, I think. Wireless range and speeds, okay again. So not the greatest performance. And also bear in mind, there are only 2 4G bands it supports. 1800 megahertz and then the 2100 one. I'm lucky because here in Spain with my provider, I can actually use the 1800 megahertz 4G band with all the Chinese devices. Now, battery life. The critically low warning has just come on for me, and I've been using the mobile for almost 2 days, and that is it. So battery life, I think, is a little bit disappointing. Now, my use was a bit of gaming, some internet browsing, messages, a few phone calls, although I don't make a lot of them, but I was using data too, and that seemed to burn through. So if you use 2 SIMs, I would say you'd struggle to make a day. You should just be able to make a day's use. I also checked out a clip of The Walking Dead. Now that was approximately 40 minutes long. That drained 15 to 16, I think it was 16% battery. So you're looking around 5 to 6 hours of use continuously, and then using it as a mobile, I would say a day, you'll be able to make it through a day, and then you have to charge it. Now charging times, approximately 4 hours to fully charge this when powered off. Didn't seem that fast at all to me. So the earpiece is actually the loudspeaker as well on the WP10 here. Now that means the performance of it isn't really that great as a speaker. It does also mean that voice calls, however, do sound loud. The quality of the voice calls, okay, not that great. But let's have a listen to the earpiece, well, the speaker. Okay, so it's got a little bit of volume to it, but it's got 0 bass. It's very tinny sounding and really not that great. Now the 3.5mm headphone jack located on the top. Sound output of that is reasonably loud. I did notice that there's a little bit of static, and to me it sounds average at best. It's not really that great. Now the camera application you get gives you a lot of options. You've got the timers, high dynamic range, control the flash, selfie. Many things are on there, but really there's no point with such a poor performing camera. So if I just tap there to focus, you'll see that it takes a long time. And in fact, it still hasn't even got lock on there. I think it just gave up actually. Oh, there we go. It's getting locked. Take a photo and you see the shutter rate is very slow and poor. Now the front camera is 2 megapixels, the rear is 5. So let's have a look at some samples here just very quickly because it's not a good camera as you'll see. So here's a video sample shot on the rear camera with its 5 megapixel sensor. You can only record up to 720p, 30 frames per second, and that quality isn't good at all. I mean, it's really bad. I mean, at least it has a camera on there, but you're not really going to be taking any serious video with this. The auto exposure, as you can see, is just all over the place. It's just pulsing in and out. It just can't get things right. Focus doesn't tend to work properly. Blurry, horrible video quality. And a sample from the front-facing camera, it can also record up to 720p, 30 frames per second from the 2 megapixel sensor. And I find the quality is okay. I mean, this will be perfectly fine for Skype calls, but in low light conditions, you will notice that the video gets a lot of grain to it and a bit choppy. So you at least want to have a good lighting conditions when you film and record or talk to someone on Skype with the front-facing camera here. So not much point in having a nice large screen if we can't even game on it. So I'm going to test out just 2 games here. These are latest titles, demanding titles, and we'll see how they perform. So the settings, auto detect here came out to visual quality optimal, and we'll see how that runs now Asphalt Extreme. Okay, so a lot of slowdown. I mean, it's barely playable. It's just so slow. The frame rate has to be around 10-15 frames per second. And the last game here is Modern Combat 5. Let's see if this has playable frame rates. It's a little choppy, but looking like it could actually be playable. Some lag there. A few stutters. So the frame rates aren't wonderful, but at least this game here is playable. So in my time using this mobile, I think it's not bad considering the price. I mean, it does have, I think, an exceptional build. For 120 US, it's quite good. It's solid, well made, metal frame on it. Now some of the things on there that are average is the performance. As you've seen there, gaming performance, there's a lot of stutter, there's a lot of lag. So really, not a gaming device. Now you can watch some movies on there, you can internet browsing, make some voice calls, check your emails, that kind of thing it is okay for. But one thing that also disappointed me is the cameras. They're not really that good. The battery life is kind of average. But again, you do have to take into consideration the price. Which is why I believe that maybe spending 40 US more is the way to go and get this Xiaomi Mi Max. Now that's a 6.44 inch mobile phone. Happens to be my daily driver. Has a really good 1080p screen on there. Much better battery life. And a way more powerful Snapdragon 650 processor with 3 gigabytes of RAM. You also get more internal storage, still dual SIM, and better 4G band support. So I think, to me, the choice is clear there. You can either go with the Windows App Store that doesn't have all the apps you want, spend a little bit more and get a much better all-rounded large mobile. Thank you so much for watching this review, and hopefully I will catch you back in the channel soon. If you haven't already, why not think about subscribing?